quite get off, faced overwhelming odds and were shot out of the sky. Flying Nazi squadrons ranged deep into Poland, destroying communications, radio stations, power plants, highways, bridges, railroads. The Polish army was disorganized by the loss of its air force and the disruption of communications. The massed ground units of the Nazi army continued their advance. Occasionally, they unveiled a new technique or item of equipment. For example, advance units of the German Fourth Army crossed the Vistula in a new type of storm boat. The Fifth, the Polish retreat developed alarming tendencies. The powerful German 10th Army, which was to form the southern claw of the great Nazi pincers, was advancing with its 5 armored divisions on either flank. On September 6th, the opposing Poles began splitting into 2 groups, the southern one falling back toward the Vistula. The armored divisions on the German right raced ahead, circling Radom and cutting off this group, which finally surrendered. Meanwhile, further north, the main Polish mass began drifting toward Lodz. The German command, perceiving that this opened the gate toward Warsaw, sent the northern Nazi armored units racing through the gap to the Polish capital. The infantry advanced in forced marches of 35 miles a day, and 2 days later relieved the panzers about Warsaw. The city was now cut off. West of Warsaw, the main Polish armies were encircled. Under terrific pressure on the ground and pounded ceaselessly from the air, they began to disintegrate. They fought on with high personal courage, but without airplanes, without communications, cut off from their general staff, the isolated Polish groups were forced to surrender, one by one.
But Warsaw still resisted. The heroic strains of the Polonaise told an incredulous world that the people of Warsaw, led by Mayor Straczynski, had erected a wall of courage around their city, defying Hitler to do his damnedest. Stopped cold by the city's desperate resistance, the Nazis were forced to send for heavier artillery. The only source of such artillery was Germany's Western Front. With great secrecy, the giant 240-millimeter howitzers were towed at high speed across the highways which Hitler had built for just such purposes and set in position around Warsaw. huge guns subjected the city to a bombardment of incredible fury. Their fire concentrated on the densely populated residential areas. For 20 days of death and horror, every man, woman, and child fought to save his city. But without food or water, human endurance failed. On September the 27th, the strains of the Polonaise died on the Warsaw radio, and the Polish capital was forced to capitulate.
Now all Polish resistance was at an end, except here, the Westerplatte forts opposite Danzig. This small island of stubborn defiance had stood up under the fire of German warships from the first day. Its guns silenced, its forts shattered, it still refused to surrender, even under point-blank fire at 800 yards range. It was an exhibition of Polish valor that will go down in history, but militarily it could not avail. On October the 1st, the garrison at last surrendered. Surrendered to face the fate of these men, Polish prisoners being marched off to Nazi prison camps, an eventual extermination. For the Nazi master race theory calls for the complete wiping out of so-called inferior races. And in village after village, local Judases point out loyal Polish neighbors.
The Poles can never forget, including another one of Hitler's famous promises. Germany has concluded a non-aggression pact with Poland. We shall adhere to it unconditionally. The world now knew that a non-aggression pact with Hitler was the kiss of death. Was completely destroyed. Completely? Not quite. During the last days of the campaign, the Russian army entered eastern Poland and took up positions along the Bug River. The two strongest armies in Europe faced each other. Hitler could decide now whether to keep on heading east or call it quits. He called it quits. Why did Hitler quit here? He had to. To continue a drive to the east would leave Germany facing the threat he had always sworn to avoid, a two-front war. How he met that threat you will see in the next film. What Hitler thought impossible was anything but. The day after Hitler crossed the Polish border, France called up her reservists. Within 24 hours, British planes had bombed German warships in the Kiel Canal. Britain merely the British government, but the British people had declared war. War on Hitler and everything he stood for. The democracies did have convictions for which people were willing to stake their lives. Unprepared? Yes. But that didn't matter. For they finally realized that what was being threatened wasn't just the integrity of Poland, but the integrity of free men everywhere in the world.
What tragedies, what horrors, what crimes has Hitler and all that Hitler stands for brought upon Europe and the world. It is upon this foundation that Hitler pretends to build out of hatred a new order for Europe. But nothing is more certain than that every trace of Hitler's footsteps, every stain of his infected and corroding fingers will be sponged and purged, and if need be, blasted from the surface of the earth. Lift up your hearts. All will come right out of the depths of sorrow and of sacrifice. Will be born again the glory of mankind.